Dane woke up early that morning, the sun streaming through her window. Today was special. She was returning to Nigeria for the first time since she left Kpanche over a decade ago. This time, it wasn't out of necessity. It was a homecoming. Kpanche had organized the trip as a surprise for Dane's birthday. Mommy, it's time to reconnect with your roots, Kpanche had said when she revealed the plan. Zuma, ever supportive, would be meeting them in Lokoja to join the journey. Dane's heart was filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had built a life abroad, but her identity was deeply tied to her homeland. As the plane descended into Abuja, she couldn't help but feel a rush of emotions. In Abuja, Kpanche rented a car and they began to drive towards Lokoja. The city was as lively as Dane remembered, and the sight of familiar landscape brought tears to her eyes. Mommy, are you okay? Kpanche asked, glancing at her mother. I am more than okay, Dane said, her voice trembling. It feels like a part of me is waking up. At Lokoja, Zuma was waiting at the bus station, her voice lightening up when she saw them. Dane, she exclaimed, pulling her sister into a tight hug. Welcome home. From Lokoja, they made their way to Uguma, the local government capital of Basa LGA. The drive was filled with laughter and stories as Zuma and Dane reminisced about their childhood. When they finally arrived in Kpanche, Dane felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. The small town was as she remembered, though some parts had changed. The dusty roads, the familiar faces, and the warmth of the community brought a sense of belonging that she hadn't felt in years. Their first stop was their family home, which had been left in Zuma's care. Though it showed signs of age, the house still stood strong, a symbol of their resilience. This house holds many memories, Dane said, running her fingers along the walls. It's where it all began, Zuma said. Kpanche listened intently as her mother and auntie shared stories of their childhood. She felt a deeper connection to her heritage, understanding the roots that had shaped her mother into the strong woman she was. The next day, Dane visited the graves of her parents. Standing before the simple headstones, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. Daddy, Mommy, she whispered, her voice breaking. I have missed you both so much. I wish you could see how far we have come. Kpanche stood silently by her side, holding her mother's hand. They would be proud of you, Mommy, she said softly. Dane nodded, tears streaming down her face. Everything I have done has been to honor them. While in Kpanche, Dane and 𝐾𝐲 organized an event to celebrate the launch of the 𝐾𝐲 Foundation in their hometown. The event, held at a local community hall, was attended by families, educators, and community leaders. During the event, Dane shared her story, speaking of her struggles and triumphs. I stand before you today not as someone who had it easy, but as someone who never gave up, she said. This foundation is not just about education, it's about hope, resilience, and the belief that we can overcome everything. The room erupted in applause, and many people approached Dane afterwards to thank her for inspiring them. Later that evening, the family sat outside under the stars, enjoying the cool breeze. 𝐾𝐲 had a notebook open, jotting down ideas for the foundation. Zuma was busy preparing roasted corn, a treat they hadn't had in years. Coming back here has reminded me of what's truly important, Dane said, her voice thoughtful. And what's that? Zuma asked. Family, community, and never forgetting where you come from, Dane said. 𝐾𝐲 looked up from her notebook, a smile on her face. That's the legacy you're leaving, Mommy. You have shown us that we can carry our roots with us, no matter where we go. The next morning, as they prepared to leave for 𝐒𝐢𝐺𝐵 to visit friends and extended family, Dane took one last look at the house. She felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had come full circle. This isn't goodbye, she said quietly. I will be back. The journey to 𝐒𝐢𝐺𝐵 was filled with more memories and reunions. Old friends and neighbors marveled at how much Dane and 𝐾𝐲 had accomplished. You have made us proud, one elder said, patting Dane on the shoulder. As they visited familiar places, Ikende, Sheria, Wuse, and Odugbo, Dane felt a renewed sense of purpose. She realized that her journey wasn't just about personal success. It was about giving back and inspiring others to dream big. When they returned to Zuma's home in 𝐒𝐢𝐺𝐵, the sisters stayed up late into the night, talking and planning. Dane shared her vision of expanding the foundation's reach, while Zuma offered practical advice. You have always been the dreamer, Zuma said, and I have always been the planner. Together, we can make this work. 𝐾𝐲 joined the conversation, adding her own insight. With the three of us working together, there is nothing we cannot achieve, she said. As Dane laid in bed that night, she thought about how far she had come. From the young girl who had been forced to grow up too soon to the woman she was now, a mother, a business owner, and a role model. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt truly at peace.